And first, I'd like to give the floor to Jesper Johnson, who has in fact played a key role in making sure that the Sigma analysis against the principles of public administration have the highest possible quality. So, to the Sigma team and Jesper, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Klaas, and welcome everyone. For the next half an hour, the Sigma team will present the main findings and recommendations from our monitoring exercise. We will show you the state of play in 2021 and make comparisons back to 2017 to show which countries and areas progressed most. This is an in-depth look at the performance of 6 public administrations in the Western Balkans. We want to thank the more than 500 government officials engaged with us throughout the process, from data collection to validation. More than 100 experts were engaged on the Sigma side to analyze 10,000 files, regulations, policy documents, action plans, data from public registries, and conduct interviews. We thank the Balkan Barometer for the great collaboration, producing representative views of the general population and businesses on key public governance questions. This data was analyzed and used to generate indicator values for 52 composite indicators, composed of 350 sub-indicators and 1,000 criteria that all define the building blocks of good public governance. The overall story is that all administrations progressed since 2017. You can see that there are more green arrows than red in the 5 substance areas of public administration. For strategic framework, poor results reflect a period of transition, as most countries were renewing their strategies during the monitoring period. As we heard, service delivery improved most. All arrows are green and 2 are in bold, which signals substantive progress. The countries that improved most, with the most bolded arrows, are Albania and Serbia. Notice that not all results are yet in for Bosnia and Herzegovina. We're finalizing the remaining areas in 2022. This table shows the average indicator values for each country and area on a scale from 0 to 5. It provides an overall view of strengths and weaknesses. In short, the positive trajectory must continue in all countries and for all areas to arrive at a level of performance that is comparable to EU member countries. And there is plenty of scope for exchanges of best practices within the region. Overall here, the dark green line representing the 2021 indicator values is in most areas outside the filled light green area showing the 2017 values. The radar shows that progress is highly uneven across the 52 dimensions measured. We have analyzed the drivers of progress for each of the sub-indicators and distilled 3 main findings. First, progress is still largely driven by improvements in the regulatory and institutional frameworks. For countries to fill the entire radar, they will have to show that this translates into improved implementation practices and outcomes for citizens. 2, progress is still largely depending on sustained political direction and support. Political stalemate or deadlock stalled a number of important reforms in the region during the past 4 years. And finally, to continue to improve, Western Balkans administrations need to urgently prioritize the development of a more professional, capable, and accountable top management level of the civil service. Greater managerial accountability is needed, not only to reduce fiduciary risk, but to strengthen trust in the public administration. I now hand over to my colleague, Bagrat Tunyan.
Thank you, Jesper. The first area is strategic framework of public administration reform. The indicator for this area has worsened for the region compared to 2017. As it was mentioned during the assessment period, all administrations except North Macedonia were in the process of renewing or extending their strategies. Additional weaknesses and gaps were identified during this transition period, which resulted in weaker indicator values for most administrations. But this challenging transition period and the fact that all administrations have been working hard to renew or extend their reform strategies also demonstrates that there is a stronger institutionalized culture and more appreciation for strategic planning of reforms in public administration in the region. We have also noticed that the quality of power planning documents has been improving. In terms of common challenges, the pace of reforms has been relatively slow in all administrations. Additionally, when it comes to funding of reforms, there is still a heavy reliance on donor-funded projects for power implementation in all administrations. Going forward, we think that all administrations can achieve better implementation results by strengthening monitoring and reporting on power implementation, focusing more on and strongly on the reform outcomes, and ensuring more systematic involvement of external stakeholders. The next area is policy development and coordination. Overall, on average for the region, there has been modest progress in this area since 2017. The average indicator value has increased slightly from 2.6 to 2.74. The improvement is driven by strong performances of Albania, North Macedonia, and Serbia. The results for Kosovo and Montenegro were weaker than those recorded in 2017. In terms of positive developments and strengths, key center of government functions are formally established and assigned to the relevant institutions. Clear procedures and rules are in place in all administrations to ensure smooth government decision-making, and regulatory impact assessment is now formally institutionalized in the whole region, with Albania introducing it last in 2019. Overall, despite many implementation challenges, the evidence-based policymaking in public consultation areas are the most improved ones since 2017. The assessment have also revealed many challenges that are common for all administrations. Quality of policy planning and alignment between policy plans and financial plans remain weak. Regular monitoring and reporting on government performances and various planning documents is also a challenge for many administrations. Finally, not all laws and regulations are fully and easily accessible for businesses and citizens of the region. In the following slides, we show selected indicators and data which illustrate some of the weaknesses and positive developments in government planning areas since 2017. As we can see from this chart, on average, more than half of all planned laws in the region were not prepared and approved within the original planned timeline. Therefore, those had to be carried forward to the next planning period. Furthermore, as we can see from this second chart, there are also many government-sponsored laws which completely bypass the official legislative planning. On average, based on the latest results, about 40% of all approved laws in the region were not included in the respective legislative plans of governments at all. Since 2017, Albania, Montenegro, and Serbia have recorded improvements in this area. Another challenge for many administrations is the excessive use of shortened or extraordinary procedures for adopting laws. Bypassing the standard procedures of lawmaking limits the time and possibility for adequate preparation and scrutiny of draft laws. This is a major challenge, particularly in Bosnia and Herzegovina and North Macedonia, although the situation in North Macedonia is better than it was in 2017. In this next chart, you can see comparative country data about shares of new laws that were amended within 1 year after adoption. Early and frequent changes in the legislative framework creates uncertainty and confusion. And it also suggests there are underlying weaknesses in the quality of legal drafting and legislative planning. This was found to be a big issue, particularly in North Macedonia and Montenegro. Finally, as we can see from this chart, which is based on external survey data, on average, businesses' perception about availability of laws and regulations affecting them has worsened in recent years in the region. The dotted black line in the middle shows clearly that decreasing trend. About half of all surveyed companies of the region think that laws and regulations affecting them are not easily available to them. The situation is relatively better and has been improving since 2020 in North Macedonia, Albania, and Serbia. Going forward, there are some recommendations we have put forward in our report. First, we think that the central government should perform more consistently and strongly the gatekeeping, central quality control and coordination function. Second, more efforts are needed to improve government policy planning, including planning for EU integration-related commitments. Finally, better coordination between parliament and government and stronger parliamentary scrutiny can help improve the quality of laws and policy. With this, I finish and I ask my colleague, Blanca Lazaro, to continue.
Thank you, Vargat. In comparison with 2017, we noticed a modest progress in the area of public service and human resource management, except for Kosovo and North Macedonia. Serbia and Montenegro were the countries that made more progress. On the positive side, we see that good civil service legislation is already in place everywhere in the region. It provides a basis for merit-based recruitment and sound professional development. Central training institutions have been set up too. Also, integrity and disciplinary systems have already robust legal frameworks. As you can see, the strengths are mainly of legislative nature, but there is a wide gap between legal frameworks and observed practices. What does it mean? First, we observe that in practice, political interference leads to little stability in the positions of senior managers. Recruitments attract a very low number of candidates, so they are not truly competitive. Recruitment procedures are properly organized, but selection methods need development. Human resource management units are in place, but their tasks are mainly of administrative nature. Capacities for modern HR management are not sufficiently developed. And finally, the perception of corruption in public administrations of the region is still high. This chart illustrates the extremely low numbers of eligible candidates per vacancy in the 4 countries. Eligible means that they meet formal requirements of the position. When there are on average 3 or 4 candidates applying for the job, the recruitment process is not really competitive, and administrations may not get the adequate candidates. Let me draw your attention to the area where the 4 Western Balkan administrations score better than the OECD countries on average. The share of women in senior civil service positions in 2020 in Montenegro, Albania, Serbia, and North Macedonia was close to 50%, while the OECD average is below 40%. So congratulations. As the way forward, we recommend, first, to reach a wide and lasting political consensus to ensure professional and stable top managers, which are essential for public administration and civil service performance. Second, the recruitment procedures need to be improved so that the best candidates for the job are selected. It involves increasing the efforts of public administration to become an employer of choice to attract a higher number of candidates to civil service. This will not be possible without the strengthening capacities for professional human resource management. Implementation of information systems is needed for data-driven management decisions. Let me now pass to the area of accountability. Over the recent years, accountability mechanisms were strengthened, but these were mainly small improvements in the regulatory and institutional frameworks. The actual practice and outcomes have not improved much, and in some cases, the situation has even deteriorated. 3 administrations improved. However, the progress was modest. Montenegro continues to have the highest area average, but it has not changed since 2017. North Macedonia and Albania improved the most, and also Serbia advanced. On the positive side, we highlight that legislation on access to public information is adequate, and generally it fulfills international requirements. The legislative framework to protect the independence of oversight bodies, the Ombudsperson, Supreme Audit Institution, and courts is also well established. Legislation on the organization of central government has generally improved. And finally, all courts made improvements, for example, by implementing electronic case management systems. Nevertheless, citizens' trust in public institutions is very low. It increased in 3 countries, but decreased in Kosovo, North Macedonia, and Montenegro. As a concrete illustration, only 34% of citizens trust courts. The EU average was 52%. Why is the trust so low? In comparison with 2017, we have noticed a deterioration of the situation. First, access to public information in practice has weakened across the region. External oversight institutions have little impact in practice. On average, only 30% of the recommendations of the ombudsperson are implemented. There is an excessive number of public bodies reporting to parliaments, and agencies do not systematically report to ministries about their performance. Finally, when we look at how long it takes to resolve administrative cases in court, we see that the regional average is longer than EU average, and in Kosovo and Serbia, citizens must wait over 2 years. For proactive transparency, you can notice that several key data sets that were publicly available in 2017 were no longer available in 2021. This is marked in the table by a red cross and concerns all countries. These are our recommendations on the way forward: to reduce the number of public bodies subordinated to parliaments, to strengthen performance management frameworks between ministries and agencies, to improve implementation of recommendations from oversight bodies, and to enhance the effectiveness of administrative courts to reduce the backlogs. We are convinced that these recommendations will contribute to building trust in the oversight institutions and more general in the government. This is very much needed in the Western Balkans. Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Nick Fix.
Thank you indeed, Blanca. As already highlighted, the service delivery area has most substantially improved in the Western Balkan region compared to 2017. So all countries definitely deserve big credits for this. We can see a clear positive trend on improving service delivery with a strong focus on digital services in both Albania and Serbia, and to a lesser extent also in North Macedonia. Progress has been made in Kosovo and Montenegro, but only to a limited extent, which puts both countries below the regional average. These general trends are as well reflected in the perception of citizens with public service delivery. Compared to 2017, the regional average stayed at the same level, but Serbia, Albania, and North Macedonia reported improving figures, whereas the perception of citizens has regressed in the 3 other economies in recent years. Underneath the overall improving trend, a number of positive developments are to be noted. First, the general laws on administrative procedures are well in place in the region and create a stable basis for good, fair, and efficient delivery of services. Second, key registries become more and more digital and linked up to the interoperability framework in place. Third, user engagement tools and instruments are gradually becoming more widespread throughout public administrations in the region, allowing them to get a better insight in the needs and expectations from users. And last but not least, digitalization has gained importance in the region, leading to improved delivery of services. Allow us, however, to put an important caveat to this positive digital development. While several services towards businesses, like setting up a business or paying VAT and even construction permits, have definitely been improved and processes became fully digital, on the other hand, the attention towards services for citizens has been uneven, resulting in still several cumbersome and non-digital services for citizens. And this brings us quite naturally to some areas for further improvement. Well, as said, the general laws on administrative procedures have been identified as a stable basis. But still, the harmonization with special laws and secondary legislation is slow and behind schedule and requires more attention and coordination. Second, in most economies, the development of service delivery standards and quality criteria is lacking, hindering the measurement and ultimately also the improvement of services and service delivery. And finally, despite the legal and even policy framework for accessibility for citizens with disabilities in place, the implementation on the ground is still ineffective. Before moving to the next and final topical area, allow us to highlight some recommendations for the future. First, it definitely needs to be recognized that the area of service delivery is a good example in demonstrating how political and administrative leadership can lead to good results indeed. But it will require the same leadership to maintain and sustain this progress in the future. Second, as mentioned, harmonization of special laws needs to be intensified, but also approached from a broader perspective and not only approached through a legal lens. Concepts like once only, for example, also have an organizational, service redesign, and digital component. Thirdly, the e-signature is and will be one of the key enablers to take digitalization to the next level in the region. Therefore, the legal, technical, and organizational measures need to be taken, but also investments in easy-to-use, user-friendly applications are needed in order to increase the digital uptake overall. And finally, we definitely like to encourage all governments here to keep the focus on digitalization as they did in the past. But this within a clear multi-channel approach on service delivery, taking into account the needs of all the users and with special attention to people with special needs. With this, I'd like to kindly hand over to colleague Ferrypot for the final part on public financial management.
Thank you, Nick. Dear participants, I will provide the main highlights in the area of PFM, Public Finance Management. In the PFM area, there has been moderate progress across the regions between 2017 and 2021. The average indicator value increased slightly from 2.8 to 3.0. Albania had the highest average indicator value of 3.4, closely following are Serbia and Kosovo. The average values in Montenegro and North Macedonia are unchanged since 2017, but it's acknowledged that important new legislation in the PFM domain is on the way in North Macedonia. Hopefully, this will provide a solid basis for the improved performance in that country in the future. The modest overall progress in the PFM domain covers variations across the 4 PFM sub-areas: budget management, PIFC, public internal financial control, public procurement, and external audit. Budget management, external audit, and public procurement have generally shown steady progress since 2017, but performance in PIFC has regressed. Before moving to weaker areas of performance, let me mention some of the strong elements in each of the PFM areas. In budget management, we note that a medium-term perspective exists across all countries and that the annual budget cycle is orderly, transparent, and increasingly credible as a result of adequate budget discipline. In both PIFC and public procurement, the legislation is in place and well aligned with existing EU standards. For external audit, we note that the independence of supreme audit institutions is now largely ensured by the legislation and that the technical capability of SAIS is steadily improving. These elements are good reason to be proud, and our compliments for the progress are well deserved. However, more interesting is to learn where we can improve performance further. Here are our key learning points for the PFM domain. They focus on the lack of strategic role of the medium-term budget, too high number of first-level budget organizations, fragmentation in internal audit, lack of competition in public procurement, and low trust of the public in the independence of the SAIS. In the next slides, I provide a further explanation. In the domain of medium-term budgeting, we believe that more can be done to link fiscal policy to strategic policy planning. A key requisite for such a strategic function of the medium-term budget is that fiscal forecasts are realistic This figure shows that in North Macedonia and Serbia, the deviations were indeed small. However, deviations were more than 10% in the other countries in the region. Let me move to PIFC. This slide focuses on managerial accountability. Among others, this concept implies that, except for line ministries and constitutional bodies, there should be no other first-level budget organizations under budgetary control of the Ministry of Finance. Line ministries should be responsible for budget allocations within their sector. This graph shows that the current situation is far off this ideal situation and that the trend is negative. Another critical element in the PIFC concept is that of independent internal audit. We note a good level of compliance in setting up internal audit units. At the same time, we notice that this is done without consideration of their appropriate size. We observe fragmentation in the form of a large number of units with less than 2 auditors. With such fragmentation, quality standards in internal audit are difficult to maintain. Let me move to public procurement. In public procurement, significant improvements were made with regard to the quality of the legislative framework and the complaints handling system. In terms of implementation, however, we note 2 issues. First, although new provisions which promote quality-based criteria have been adopted, price remains practically the only one contract award criterion. Only in Montenegro we observe a more moderate use of that criterion. The second element refers to the level of competition in public tenders. Despite the efforts made to increase the transparency of public procurement and the removal of barriers to access public bidding opportunities, low competition is characteristic of all countries in the region. The average number of bids per public tender in the region in 2020 was only 2.5 bids. At the end of the budget cycle is external audit done by the SAIs, Supreme Audit Institutions. It is crucial that the SAIs are considered politically impartial and free from bias. We observe that the majority of the citizens do not consider their SAIs to be independent from the political powers. In this respect, Albania and Serbia show a positive development. Although still a minority, the share of the public that perceives the SAI as independent from the government has strongly increased in both countries. Overall, this brings me to 5 key recommendations in the PFM domain. First, improve the alignment between fiscal planning and sector strategies. Second, reduce the number of first-level budget organizations. Third, develop strategies to ensure effective internal audit units. 4, improve the level of competition in public tenders. And 5, continue to safeguard the independent position of SAIs. Thank you. I thank you for your attention. I would like to go back to Jesper.
Thank you very much, Barry. So now our colleagues have shown you selected highlights from the Sigma monitoring report. This was really just the tip of the iceberg. We've built a public portal so you can explore all this data by yourself. Let me show you quickly how it works. First, you will see a radar, which shows the average indicator values across all of the 52 dimensions measured, grouped in 6 thematic areas. You can change your reference point in the middle half circles, compare back in time to a specific country. Click over here to download the data set, export charts, cite our work, or share this chart on social media. Next comes the heat map. You can filter this table to show which country performs best in which area. And you can click here to show progress back to 2017. Next comes the highlight section, where we feature data sets that we believe you will find particularly interesting. Further down comes country entries and thematic entries. But let me quickly scroll back up to the main radar to show you how you can zoom in to understand how the indicator values are constructed and find the raw data underneath. I will pick access to public information. Now you can see that this indicator is built from 6 sub-indicators. And if I click on law and access to public information, you can see that it's constructed of 10 criteria. You can change your reference point again. If I go back to the main radar, we can explore some of the practice-oriented sub-indicators. For example, how open public administrations are in practice. And the remainder of the indicators, number 5 and 6, focus on the level of satisfaction by citizens and businesses. You can also visit the methodology page to learn more about our framework. But let me go back quickly to the country entry. You can see that it's the same basic design, but further down you have some more charts that shows how you can compare performance on specific indicators and show the most significant change over the period. So thank you. I hope you will explore the portal, and I give the word back to Klaas.